Who do you think stands out? Because yes, I do not think, I could be wrong, but I do not think that Brad Holmes is going to have an all defense draft. It's not going to happen. Now, the position that I think clearly that they're going to probably target, the offensive line. They could target some competition, maybe the big bodied receiver, maybe another running back, but that's kind of out of the question. But I think a name, I think a position that many people don't think they need, but they could still target is tight end. I think they like what they have in Sam Laporta and Brock Wright, but there's still competition to be had behind them. So I think that maybe a tight end or a wide receiver, maybe one of those positions, you can even find depth as an undrafted free agent. But I do think for certain there will be a lineman on the offensive line taken. Tell me some names that have caught your attention. Maybe day two guys that people aren't talking about too much.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that there's some interesting names with the offensive line when you take a look at guys like a Willie Lampkin. Willie Lampkin was a guy that Daniel Jeremiah mentioned and you wrote about. Is he gonna? He's not going to be in Indianapolis, unfortunately. And so you're going to have to wait to see what he has to offer until his pro day. But again, that's a guy that physically he may not be the most eye-popping guy, but when you watch him play, you see a dude that is just tenacious and he's not scared to mix it up with all the different defensive linemen that he's had to work against throughout his career, which in the ACC, there's some pretty good talents when you talk about defenses from Clemson and Boston College and guys that perennially have, these NFL defensive linemen. And Willie Lampkins just stood the test of time against these guys. So it's been fun to watch him develop. When you look a little bit deeper at the tight end class and you talk about a guy like Jake Brenningstool from Clemson, who was pretty productive for the Tigers. I know that they reached the college football playoff and they had 3 losses, I believe, in the regular season, but found a way to get into the playoff. And Brenningstool is a guy that has just been kind of doing it and doing it all for Clemson throughout his career. Really good pass catcher, can mix it up and block as well. And then if you want to get into Michigan, guys with Michigan ties, you talk about a guy like Caden Priestcorn from Ole Miss, who is from Lake Orion, I believe, and had a really good start to his career at Memphis and then transferred to Ole Miss and was a really big part of their passing attack for the last couple seasons. So, yeah, there's depth everywhere. I'm really looking forward to seeing, especially on that offensive line, who separates themselves because there's a cluster of prospects that kind of look like they're destined for maybe late day one, early day two, when you talk about the Tyler Bookers of the world, Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson, and then who separates themselves amongst that group. And then this other pod of offensive linemen, both on the interior and the offensive tackles, who takes that next step from being a guy that might be looked at as a day 3 pick to being a day 2 pick with some ability to contend for a spot early in day 2. So that's what the combine's all about. And I cannot wait to especially see these offensive linemen. Every year there's 1 or 2 of them that run these blazing fast 40s despite
Yeah.
their size. And it's just so much fun to watch. So that'll be one position group for sure I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and the wide receiver that kind of sticks out that's similar that could compete with Tim Patrick is Jaden Higgins out of Iowa
Yes.
State. I think you've
Yes.
started to talk about him, so I've watched his highlights, and I think that there'll be some recommendations maybe made from the Lions coaching staff for him based on the talent that he brings to the table. I think that he's a player that could be very much in line with what they're looking for. What do you think and what do you make of? Because clearly, Brad Holmes definitely is intrigued by players from Alabama. He's seen CJ Depre from Alabama, the tight end. What do you think about the potential that he's got? I think he's an athletic pass catcher, kind of in the mold of Sam Laporta. But I think he maybe needs a little bit more development. Maybe many kind of look at him day 2, maybe day 3 kind of option. Do you go skill position there, or is another tight end that potentially suits what the Lions could look for? See, the issue is with now the Lions tight end, they're looking for someone really prolific as a blocker. I think Sam
Yes.
Laporta is going to be
Yes.
somebody that's going to be taking all of the attention. So I'm curious to see what ends up happening with the tight end. Anybody else that sticks out to you that's an offensive weapon? Maybe do you think that the Lions could look to Alabama for maybe a position outside of quarterback that you did that you've looked at? I think the tight end could be interesting, especially if it's a later round and he's still there.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about Alabama, I think Booker's your guy on the interior offensive line. I think I like that fit. And I think if he's on the board at 28, he's going to get a serious look from the Lions. I like that you mentioned Higgins, and I'm not like a full Jaden Higgins expert quite yet. I still need to continue to kind of get deeper in his repertoire. But from what I've seen, there's a little Josh Reynolds there in his game as far as his build, his route running, the way he creates separation, and then when needs to go get a 50-50 ball, he can go get it. The Lions loved Josh Reynolds. Obviously, there was the contract that they offered him. They might have lowballed him a little bit in free agency, but from when he was with the Lions obviously appreciated his skill set and his willingness to do the little things. I think Higgins is a guy where if he's sitting there day two, whether it's at 60, whether it's at, I believe the estimation for the compensatory pick is 101, and he's just there, that's a guy you should probably be keeping an eye on if you're a Lions fan. I like Higgins a lot, just in what I've been able to see. And then I think with Alabama, I think that conversation starts with Tyler Booker. And then, maybe they do throw a little consideration at a guy like Jalen Milroe. But I think right now the prime target for the Lions, just because of how well he would fit, is Tyler Booker from Alabama. And I think if the Lions go back to that it's probably going to be Booker.